So next up is our first, I want to say, adult speaker, very illustrious, very devoted, Gursik, whose life is a role model, a beacon for many of us who know him closely. And I'm referring to Dr. Inder Mohan Singh, who is the chairman of Chalnaa Foundation, one of the organizing bodies of this conference. Dr. Inder Mohan Singh has a very impressive resume as a technologist, a Yale scholar, an entrepreneur, a visionary. He's done amazing work in the field of technology and taken companies public. What impresses me about Dr. Inder Mohan is that he's way ahead of the herd, both in technology, where he's been a visionary, and in trailing praises about Sikhi. About 20 years ago, he started Chalnaa Community Center, where all the services were performed in English. I think the community has still not caught up with that. I am personally very blessed to be a part of his extended family, and I've always looked up to him with a lot of fondness and wanted to be like him. And I'm very grateful to him for giving me opportunities to dwell upon Gurbani at the conferences and the monthly study circles. So with this, I would like to request Dr. Inder Mohan Singh to give us his thoughts on Hukam. Again, a very, very tough subject. And as we do Vichar, and as we talk about these tough issues, these beautiful Gurbani lessons, we have to remember what the Guru says about education, about being a scholar. The Guru says, "Parna Gurna Sansar ki kar hai, andar Trishna Vikar." Accumulating scholastic credentials, degrees, it's a worldly way, and it also creates ego at some level. However, so parya, so pandit bina, gur sabad kare vichar. The true scholar, the true pandit is one who contemplates upon the Shabad. Because Shabad is grace, and Shabad also helps you acknowledge grace and brings about humility. Dr. Inder Mohan has chosen a tough subject, Hukam, and he quotes in his abstract, "Kiv sachiara hui hai, kiv kore tutte pal, Hukam rajaaee chalnaa, Nanak likhya naal." However, the Guru also says that it's difficult to describe Hukam. Hukam na keha jaye. And so we have two speakers, one at the beginning and one at the end, just in case we don't fully understand Hukam. And with this, I'll request Dr. Inder Mohan Singh to share with us living in alignment with Hukam.
Waheguru Ji Ka Khalsa, Waheguru Ji Ki Fateh. In Japji Sahib, near the beginning, Guru Nanak Dev Ji asks, "Kif se chara hoiya?" How can we achieve union with the divine or the true one? And he gives us the answer, "Hukam rajaaee chalnaa, Nanak likhya naal." It's a little bit of ringing in the system, right? Turn the volume down just a little bit. Sorry about that. So he says, "Hukam rajaaee chalnaa, Nanak likhya naal." Walk in the Hukam, which is inscribed within us, within all creation. Likhya naal. Let us look at what is Hukam and what does it mean to walk in alignment with the Hukam. How do we become Satyara, or one with the truth? How do we achieve that state of union with the true one, with Waheguru, through Hukam rajaaee chalnaa? The word Hukam means a command or an edict, and in the religious context it's often translated as divine will or commandment. Hukam also refers to the system or framework ordained by the Creator, under which everything in the universe operates. Gurbani tells us that everything is under his hukam, nothing outside of hukam. Hukme andar sabko, bahar hukam na koi. And jo jo tera hukam, tibete bhona. As is your hukam, so will everything happen. Sagal samagri tumre sutar dhari, tumte hoye so agya karo. So everything in all of creation is strung on the thread of your hukam. And since it all comes from you, it is obedient to your hukam. Alright, whatever works. We can try to describe hukam and talk about it, as I'm doing, but ultimately hukam is beyond our ability to fully understand or describe. Like Vaheguru himself, his hukam is incomprehensible, a gum and a gochar. Hukmi hova na kar, hukam na kaya jai. And hukam na jati kekara, keh na saki jai kar. No one really knows how great the hukam is, and no one can describe his actions completely. His hukam cannot be fully described in words, but it is a guru who shows us how to walk on the Gurmat path in alignment with his hukam. There is this common image of God as a human-like figure, a kind of puppeteer, who is directing and micromanaging everything in the universe. I like to think of hukam more as a framework or system under which everything in the universe operates under his command. This includes the laws of nature, which scientists have been studying and progressively understanding more and more. But beyond the laws of nature, his hukam is manifested through spiritual laws, which are the focus of Gurbani and other religious scriptures. In Japji again, Guru Nanak tells us, Kita pasao eko kawao, tisne hoye lak daryao. You created the vast expanse of the universe with one word, and hundreds of thousands of rivers began to flow. We can think of the kawao or word as the divine hukam, or the expression by Vaheguru of these laws of nature and of the spiritual laws. Everything flows from the one word or hukam. Scientists have been discovering over centuries that there are certain laws underlying all the different phenomena we see in nature. While we have progressively learned more and more, we still understand only a tiny fraction of all the wonders of his creation. There is much, much more that science still cannot address or explain. It's important to remember that anything that science does discover is a part of his hukam, a reflection of his awesome glory and of the wonders of his creation. Looking at all the myriad living beings, including human beings, they are all created by him under his hukam. But the way I understand it, he did not just command each one into existence as the proponents of intelligent design and others would have you believe. Instead, he produced all this incredible world of myriad creatures through the laws of nature and through the fascinating process of evolution, along with the underlying processes of biochemistry and genetics. Just look at all the complexities and power of the eye and the brain. All of these are created through the basic laws of nature, including evolution. So there really is no contradiction between religion and evolution or science in general. If you look at the universe, not only is it incredible that there are all these galaxies, stars, and planets, but the whole process through which they have been created, starting with the Big Bang, is absolutely awe-inspiring. There is so much beauty in how all this can happen from a few basic laws. You can almost feel spiritual reading about all the incredible discoveries that scientists have been making about the universe if you recognize that it's all a part of his creation. Karte kudrati mustaq. O Creator, beholding your creation, I am filled in love for you. Gurbani also tells us that Vaheguru is the master of countless universes, Akot Brahmand ko Thakur Swami, and that he constantly creates and destroys universes. Now many physicists are also starting to speculate about the multiverse and of bubble universes popping in and out of existence. The laws of nature are only one part of his hukam that we can see and talk about. There is another whole universe of spiritual laws that are also a part of his hukam, and that is what Gurbani is about. Gurbani tells us, for example, about the laws of dharma, whereby each of us is judged and held accountable for our actions. And we reap the results of the actions that we sow. It also tells us about the path of Naam Simran and Bhakti that we should follow, and describes how God takes care of his devotees or bhagats. Okhi ghadi na dekhan dei, apna bin samale. Haath de rakhe apni saas saas pratipale. The word birad often translates as his innate nature, but we can think of it as his way, as one of his spiritual laws. According to this spiritual law, he watches over those who reach a certain stage of bhakti. These are just a few examples of his spiritual laws given in Gurbani. Waheguru is the creator of these physical and spiritual laws, but he is not limited by them. He is beyond all limits and transcends these laws. He is not arbitrary or whimsical. He is just, kind, and forgiving. If his will appears to be unfair or mean, it is our limited understanding. Pura nyao kare kartar. The Creator administers perfect justice. Tum karo bhala, hum bhalo na jane, tum sada sada dayala. Whatever you do is always good, but we do not understand and appreciate it. You are always kind and compassionate. So what does it mean to live in alignment with Hukam? What does it mean to live in alignment with Hukam, or Hukam rajaaee chalnaa? There are two major aspects of Hukam rajaaee chalnaa. One is Hukam manna, or joyful acceptance of whatever happens as his will. And the other is understanding and living our lives according to his Hukam, or Hukam kamana. What do we mean by that? Guru Nanak ji says, Hukam rajaaee chalnaa, Nanak likhya naal. What is meant by likhya naal? The universal divine Hukam is written deep within each one of us. However, we cannot understand it because we are separated from our true reality by our haumain, the strong sense of separate identity, often translated as ego. As we progress spiritually, this universal divine Hukam within ourselves is what we start to discover and to follow in our lives. Gurbani instructs us about this Hukam even when we are not yet at that stage where we can understand this divine Hukam in our lives. So Gurbani is Hukam in a form that is accessible to us. It tells us how we should live our lives to achieve union with the divine. So this aspect of Hukam rajaaee chalnaa is understanding and following the divine Hukam as given to us by Gurus in Gurbani, Hukam bujna and Hukam kamana. So let us take a look at the first aspect of Hukam, bhana manna. What that means is to realize that everything happens in his Hukam and to cheerfully accept whatever occurs as his will. Jyotud bhave sai bhali kar. And tera kiya meetha lage. Whatever you cause to happen, that will be sweet to me. We do have to be fully engaged in life and do our best. But at the same time, we have to accept whatever happens as his Hukam. Even in the face of misfortune, we have to keep our faith and remain in Chatti Kala. The most inspiring example of bhana manna is that of Guru Arjan Dev Ji, who underwent the most horrific tortures and still declared, Tera kiya meetha lage. An important part of living in Hukam is recognizing that everything is his Hukam and celebrating it and accepting it joyously. This is a way of expressing our devotion and love for Waheguru. Soi karna je aap karaye, जिथे रखे सा भली जाए, सोई स्याना सुपतवंता हुक्म लगे जिस मीठा जियो. The Gurmukh not only accepts the divine will but considers it to be sweet. Hukam lage jis meetha jiyo. It's easy to talk about accepting his will, but it can be really hard to actually do so in practice. As Guruji tells us, Tera mahal agochar mere pyare, bikham tera hai bhana. It is so difficult to accept your will. Even when we are trying to do the right things and putting our best foot, things don't always work out the way we want. Tu karta karna mein nahi, jahu kari na hoi. He is doing what he wills. What I attempt may or may not work. But I have to try and then cheerfully accept the result. You must have faith that what happens in his hukam is for the best. Tum karo bhala bhalu na jane, tum sada sada dayala. We know why Guru is compassionate. We know he is just. So whatever he does is for the best, even though we may not realize it. However, bhana manna is not to be confused with resignation or fatalism. Gurbani tells us to do our uttam, to make our best effort to do the right things. Looking at the lives of the Gurus, we see that they did not just accept injustice and tyranny as his will. They resisted it and they fought against it, often at great personal sacrifice. When we talk about bhana manna, accepting his will, we usually refer to how to deal with misfortune, how to deal with when things go wrong. But both bad and good things, dukh and sukh, happen in his will. Sukh doi kapde, sukh dukh doi kapde, pehre jai manukh. Sukh and dukh, good and bad fortune, happiness and suffering are all his gifts. Je sukh de ta tujhe aradi, dukh bhi tujhe dhyayi. Je bhukh de te thi raja, dukh vich sood manayi. So whatever happens, we have to remember him always. Pray to him when things are wrong, thank him when things are good, but always think of him. We have to remember him both in moments of pain and happiness. Hukam is not just accepting misfortune, it is also celebrating when good things happen. When something bad happens, we say, oh well, it is God's will. We are effectively blaming him, but just saying we have no choice but to accept it. When good things happen, we often take credit for them. We believe it is a result of our hard work or our smarts, or else we just take them for granted. Good things also happen in his will. They are an opportunity to celebrate all our blessings and to remember him and practice gratitude. If we just pause and reflect on all our blessings, there is so much to be grateful for. I just saw this slide on the internet and decided to copy it and share with you, just to remind us of all the many, many things to be thankful for that we take for granted. Beyond bhana manna or accepting his divine will is hukam kamana, obeying or living according to hukam. It is following the teachings of the Gurus and the universal divine hukam deep within ourselves, and living our whole life according to his will, according to hukam. When the Guru asks, Kif sachara hoya, is it possible to become one with the true one, with Vaheguru, just by acceptance alone? The Guru is talking about more than bhana manna or accepting his will. He is talking about being in alignment with the divine hukam, about living the hukam. Gursikh meet chalo gur chali, jo gur kahe soi bhal mano, har har katha nirali. O Sikhs of the Gurus, or friends, walk on the Guru's path. Do as the Guru tells you, because his message is wonderful. The teachings of Gurbani can be said to cover two broad areas. One is spiritual, or our relationship with the divine, the path of Naam. The other is ethics, or how we relate and act towards one another, our achar. Sarab dharam is Sresh dharam, har ko naam jap nirmal karam. The two major dimensions, worshipping Vaheguru and having pure actions. It is clear that both spirituality and ethics have to go hand in hand. The practice of Path, Kirtan and Naam Simran helps to overcome our home and cleanses us of our evil tendencies. But if we go through the motions of chanting Vaheguru, 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 doing kirtan and part, but continue to cheat and to be mean to others, or to act in pride and anger, then we are trying to cheat Vaibu or ourselves? Our spiritual life has to be reflected in our actions. Now, Hukam and Naam are closely related. Both words often refer to the all-pervading divine presence or Jyot that underlines everything. Ek ko naam Hukam hai, Nanak Satgur diya bujhaaye jiyo. Hukam jnano manaya, then antar sabad basaya. So living in Hukam is to be in tune with Naam. Recognizing Hukam and living in alignment with Hukam helps to overcome Home, which is the biggest obstacle to Naam. Home naave naal virodh hai, doye naam se ek thai. So Home and Naam are essentially opposites. We cannot achieve Naam without overcoming our Home. At the same time, living in Hukam is the way to conquer our Home. Nanak hukme je bujhe, ta Home kahe na koi. Oh, Nanak, who understands his Hukam, does not speak in Home. Hukam manne ta har mile, ta vichcho Home jaye. If you submit to the Hukam, then you shall meet with Vaibu, and only then will your ego depart from you. The ethical message of Gurbani includes overcoming our Home and our evil tendencies, Kaam, Krodh, Lobh, Mokh, Ahankar, lust, anger, greed, unhealthy attachment and pride, and all the other evil tendencies that come from out of them. Hatred, violence, cruelty, dishonesty, slander. And then there are the guns, the positive qualities that we have to inculcate, including sat or truth, santokh or contentment, daya or compassion, dharma or doing our duty, paropkar, altruism, and khima or forgiveness. Just a few examples of the messages. An important point to note is that Gurbani gives us a set of key ethical values, not a list of do's and don'ts, such as the 10 Commandments of Christianity, the Sharia law of Islam, or the Karm Kand of Hinduism. Such core ethical values are universal and timeless, while the do's and don'ts of morality are often driven by cultural and historical context, and they tend to be specific to a time and place. What people think of as morality differs from one group to another, and this often leads to conflict and confusion. One group says, we cannot do this because my religion says so. And another group says, but my religion says this instead. And so we argue and we fight about it. But most people can, on the other hand, largely agree on core values and the kind of core universal values that are advocated by Gurbani. As we discussed earlier, ethics and spirituality are intimately connected. One key guiding principle of our achar, or how we treat others, is to recognize the divine light in all part of the one Hukam, all created in this Hukam. We must treat everyone with respect and kindness because each one is a child of the same Creator. Nanko bari nahi begana, sagal sam unko banai. And the Shabad ends with Sab mein rav raya prab eko, pek pek nanak pek sai. Lord Devi says, I do not see any enemy, I do not see any stranger. And he adds that he sees the same divine light pervading all. Similarly, in this Shabad by Bhagat Kabir Ji, he sees everything originating in the one divine light. So we should not judge anyone as good or bad. Aval Allah nur paya, kudrat ke sab bande, ek nur pe sab jakujya, kaun bhale kaun bande. Hukam pachane again ends with Hukam pachane so eko jane banda ke yasu. The last line emphasizes that realizing the divine Hukam, we see the one in everyone, which is again the basis of how we should treat each other. One question that frequently comes up in the context of Hukam is the age-old issue of determinism versus free will and choice. According to Gurbani, everything is under his Hukam. We have no power on our own. Mera kiya kuch na hoye, kar hai Ram, hoye so hoye. Tu karta karna mein nahi, jaho kari na hoye. You are the doer of everything. Whatever I do won't necessarily work out. कीता करना सर्व रजाई, फिर कीचा जे कर सकिए, अपना कीता कुछ न होवे, जो हर भावे तो रखिए, हर जो सबको तेरे बस, संजोर नहीं ये कुछ कर हम साके, जो भावे तेरे बख्श. So Guruji is telling us on the one hand, there's nothing we can do by ourselves, everything is being done by Vaheguru. All that happens and will happen is by His will. By ourselves we can't really do anything. At the same time, Gurbani repeatedly tells us to make the right choices. We are enjoined to walk on the path shown by the Guru. We have to do our part in Naam Simran. As discussed earlier, we must overcome our home, avoid evil, and control Kam, Krodh, Lobh, Moh, Ahankar, and practice good achar, exercise compassion, do paropkar and seva, and so on. Udam, so we have to do our Udam. Udam kare dhyan jiyo tu, kamam dhyan sukh punch, dhyan dhyan tu prabhu mil, nanak utri chint. So we have to make our effort, do our Udam, to practice the teachings of Gurbani. Do Naam Simran, and we will achieve union with God. All our anxieties and worries will be removed. Nanak utri chint. We are also told that we are held accountable for our actions. That we reap the results of what we sow through our actions, both good and bad. Tadde dos na do kise, dos karma apanya. Jo main kiya, so main paya. Dos na bija avarjana. Clearly, Gurbani asks us to make the right choice and to do the Udam or take the initiative to make a serious effort to follow through on the Guru's teachings. If God is directing everything, and we do not have any real control over our actions, then why should we even bother to try? How do we address this conundrum? Now we have to realize that in any case, our choices are highly constrained. We have no control over our DNA, which determines much of our personality and plays a big role in how we act in a given situation. We do not choose our parents or how the DNA from the mother and the father is going to get combined. And we don't control the environment in which we grow up, which has a huge impact on who we are and how we act. The actions that we can take are also limited by the external situation we face as we make our choices. So nevertheless, it's my understanding that I do have to make the right choices and take responsibility for my actions and try to follow the Guru's teachings. At the same time, I must see it all as a part of His Hukam. My ability to do anything, including acting according to the Guru's teachings, is also through His blessing, and I should be grateful. And if things don't work out as I intended, then I also have to accept that as His Hukam. So that's the only answer I have to the conundrum. Both sides are true. You have to deal with it. You have to accept both sides of that. It is like physicists today have to accept that everything is both a wave and a particle at the same time. Things that seem contradictory, but they actually do play together and they work together. Vaheguru Ji ka Khalsa, Vaheguru Ji ki Fateh.
So, very illuminating talk. Wonder if the dilemma is solved or perpetuates itself. I have a few questions. Actually, I have two questions. First of all, Muji, thank you so much for this very, comprehensive talk on Hukam and our attempt to understand it and understand what seem like contradictions, but are two parts of it, as you have explained. So the first question is, can Hukam change or reverse itself?
I'm not even sure what that question means.
Yeah, I know.
Hukam is from Vaheguru. If he reverses something, that's part of his Hukam as well if he changes it. I don't know what it means to say it's reversed or changed.
The person who asked this question? Yeah.
Sometimes we don't know what the Hukam is. And let's use the example. Somebody wants to have a child. And then it happens. That's what I meant.
Go ahead.
Hukam is the universal law which has been created by the all-power, Almighty. That is like a macroclimate. We cannot change the microclimate. Then come the macroclimate. Then come the microclimate. Then macroclimates are our own effort. So sun is to rise in east, it will rise. It is a hukam. That Guruji meant by that was universal law and not the individual one. As we take the word.
Yeah, if the original question was, can we make something happen or change? If we can, then we are part of his hukam as well. You know, scientists change things in nature all the time, but that's all part of. And their brains are created through natural laws, through evolution. It's all part of his hukam.
Yeah,
So if they are able to change something, that's part of his hukam as well. I don't know if that makes sense or not, but that's how I see it.
The second question is one that's universally asked all the time. So I'm going to pose it to you, Vici. So the question is, how can misfortune and bad things happening to good people be part of Hukam? So two people have asked this question in different ways. That how can God's will
Include
make
things that go bad to us.
bad people prosper and good people suffer? Why does evil exist?
Right. That is the age-old question, and it's. We said during the talk that hukam is a gam apoche. We can't really understand God's ways, and He has His own purpose that we do not understand. And our idea of what is right and wrong is very limited. And also, remember, one of the things that we consider is horrible is when lots of people get killed. But if you look at it from God's perspective, our souls are immortal. He's really switching them from one life to the other. That's kind of one little angle where things aren't what they seem to be. According to also the Sikh and the Eastern traditions, a lot is based on our karma from previous actions, our sanskars, that we don't understand. There is a whole dimension to some of it. If you look at a child wants certain things and you won't let him have. Sometimes I think parents are very mean, you won't let him have the thing he wants to eat, won't let him go and play. But the parent knows that it's not, that we have to be mean and strict about certain things for their own benefit. And many of these are that kind of thing where the broader objective of Waheguru may make a lot of sense at his level, but doesn't make sense at our level because we are only like children and he's like the all-knowing parent. So that can apply, that can make sense in some situations. You can't use that to explain everything.
So a subsequent question, kind of related to the first one, is when people are suffering or there is poverty and hunger, do we accept or do we say that these people deserve it?
We should not be judging anybody. That's the broad message of Gurbani. Kisa numandani kehna. We don't know what the reason is, but what we can apply is compassion and seva and paropkar and try to deal with it. But not blame anybody. Because we don't know what Waheguru's reasoning is for that.
So the last question is every Sikh controlled by Hukam or only Amritdharis? Who asked that?
I'll let any Amritdhari try to answer it. I'm an Amritdhari too, but that's
What was the question?
That was your question?
No, can you repeat the question?
Okay. Is every Sikh controlled by Hukam or only Amritdharis?
And the answer is yes.
Let me try to answer that. I think every human being is.
Correct.
No,
I don't think Sikhism has anything to do with it.
every human being.
of course. That's what they've been saying on everything.
Every particle of you.
This is obviously a joke, not a real question.
Every
So I didn't try
particle
to
of
answer
you.
that.
Dr. Isaac?
Say something.
My comment was a very brief one. The previous question that was dealing with why bad things happen to good people.
Keep it closer.
And in that statement, you have a box which says that the creator is a micromanager of everything that you do. That you have no choice in the matter. If you have no choice in the matter, then you can't be held responsible for anything that you might do. That's not the idea. Hukam is not a dictatorial thing which crosses every T and dots every I. Now we'll talk about it. That's why there are two presentations on Hukam. We just heard one. That's half. So hold on to your horses. We'll get the last one at the end. And I promise you that you will not have the answers totally.
I thought I already knew all the answers. Sagama Gochar, of course.
Hukam Naki Haja.
Thank you so much for illuminating us on this idea of hukam, that it's so broad and so deep that it's hard to pinpoint, but we can find many places within Gurbani that we can understand the hukam more broadly. And my question, I'm sorry I was not able to give my card up, is that perhaps I have a question, a general question, whether we perhaps misunderstand the notion of hukam based on English translations that are speak of it as God's will within this Judeo-Christian framework that perhaps misleads us from really what the gurus are speaking about within Gurbani itself.
I would just want to talk more in terms of a overall system and framework by Waheguru rather than individual decisions in his will.
Yes, like Ajay Singh was just mentioning, not this dictatorial will that's imposed on everyone or trying to cause us to act in a certain way, but overall this universal, this natural law that we are all a part of, that then our karma relates to within that. But I think that we get very misled when we try to understand it within this kind of Christian English framework that we have also come to inherit.
That it's a command, right?
Yeah.
Any other questions that were not written but are demanding, needing to be answered?
First, I will like to be excused because it may not be well understood way. The other day I was reading the Buddhist Encyclopedia of Religion, and there it was mentioned that if God was there, then there is a disease and disaster. So the concept of God by Buddhism is entirely different to what we have. Unfortunately, when I go deep, we have followed Christianity. When we say he means male, as one person said, a male guy sitting in the sky. So the God concept has become in our religion also. Male guy sitting in the sky, it is not like that. Now comes ek omkar. Now again, the many interpretation. But omkar, ultimate reality. It is not an individual. It is some phenomena. Eka nur again, light. So when we are translating all the time, God, it is not the God, it is the reality. So when it is reality, then it is biochemical individuality. Everybody is different. Everybody has the same genetic material. So as I told earlier, the microclimate, micro. Similarly, there is a micro phenomena and then the micro thing. Now, the life has been defined as a self-perpetuating open system of linked organic reactions. So everybody has got different organic reactions.
So what's the question?
The question is how come or how we are lucky or unlucky. It is not dependent on a general phenomena, but it is an individual system. That how our future is determined from the very date of conception, how the things go on. So we can go in that way that Hukam is Hukam rajaaee chalnaa. Whatever we have been provided, we have to remain contented in that one. It is not that but I should say, God give me this. We should say, God, whatever you have given us, we should be happy in that. So that is our
Thank you.
That's right. Correct.
Would you like to add
The correct version.
remarks? Would you like to say anything in conclusion?
No, I think we've commented from many directions. It's an infinite subject. You can comment about it in so many ways, but I think we made a little bit of an attempt to give a kind of a overall perspective on how we can address it in our lives. And that is the main issue. What do we do in our lives about it? And that was my main concern.
Thank you,
Not
Vijay.
defining things, but how do I live my life according to it?
Thank you, everyone.